Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Show Me the Meaning, Wisecrack's movie podcast.
Yeah, show me the meaning.
Oh man!
I'm sorry.
Whoa,
I'm sorry. I've been nursing a very sore throat over the past few days. I'm not in a yelling mood.
All right. Well, what's up, everybody? I'm Austin Hayden. I'm joined by the Show Me the Meaning crew. We've got Raymond, as always.
Hey, gang.
And joining us, you may recognize this name from many videos on the Wisecrack channel. Director, writer, producer. He's also been on Show Me the Meaning. He's also on all the other podcasts. He's just basically all around Wisecrack bro. Deluxe, luxurious, Lux Luthor. What else we got here? Welcome to the show, Lux. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's funny you started with Deluxe because that's what everyone calls my brother.
Oh, really?
Well, he's
His first
Daniel
name?
Luxembourg, so
Yeah, there we go. I cracked the case.
yeah. But yeah,
Lux, M Lux. I don't know. Yeah.
Micro Lux is somehow what people called me for a long time, even though I'm much larger than my brother. But that's life. Maybe it was like, I guess it was ironic. I guess
It's like microdosing. Like we're gonna get a little bit of micro-luxing in this show. Is that?
Yeah, that would actually be fairly appropriate to my lifestyle. So maybe that is maybe that was that was years ago, but maybe that was foresight.
Perfect. Well, this week we're going to be talking about the newly released, hotly discussed, critically divisive film directed by Chloé Zhao, Eternals. It's the latest installment in the MCU. It stars Gemma Chan, Richard Madden, Kumail Nanjiani, Leah McHugh, Brian Tyree Henry, Lauren Ridloff, Barry, is it Keegan? It's an Irish last name. I think it's Keegan. Kagan? Is it Kagan?
It might be Kagan.
I'm not sure. Yeah, so sorry if you speak Irish, please correct us. Byrie Keegan, Kagan, Kogan, something along those lines. Don Lee, Kit Harington, Salma Hayek, Angelina Jolie. And if you stayed for the post-credit sequence, Harry Styles is in this too. So anyway, as always, we're going to go around and we're going to do our first impressions. But before we do, I'm just going to give you a quick little elevator pitch. Look, following the events of Avengers Endgame, an unexpected tragedy forces the Eternals, who are these ancient alien type being things, sorta, whatever, we'll figure that out, who have been living in secret on Earth for thousands of years, forces them out of the shadows to reunite against mankind's most ancient enemy, the Deviants. And then you get this sprawling 2.5 hour. Is it an epic? We don't know. We'll see how it is. But before we get into the first impressions, I do have a little bit of housekeeping. I just got to give a couple of updates. Remember, we do have a Twitter page, so please go ahead and give us a follow. It's SMTM_POD, SMTM_POD. Also, if you like our podcast, please make sure you rate and review it on Apple Podcasts because it really helps us grow the pod so we can keep diving into these sick movies. Or if you don't use Apple Pod, if it's Spotify, do the same thing, or whatever it is that you listen to us on. Please just boost us up, give us a rating and a review. As I said, follow us on Twitter. And also, we've been doing a bunch of Patreon bonus episodes. So if you're a patron, make sure you go check those out. If you're not a patron, go to patreon.com/wisecrack so you can check that out. We did Philosophy of Acting a couple weeks ago, which we've gotten some really good feedback on. People seem to have loved us diving into what makes a good performance. We talk about some of our favorite performances. The last Patreon episode that we did, we talked about debut films, like what makes a great debut film and maybe what are some of the best debut films that have ever been done.
And Thomas Flight stuck around for that conversation as well. It was a great combo.
That was sick, yeah. And so you can access all that stuff at patreon.com/wisecrack for just as little as $2. And at the end of this episode, we're also going to play a little teaser of some of the bonus content that we've been releasing. And then we do want to just give a reminder as well that next week we're going to be doing our big, giant mailbag episode where we're going to go through the backlog of mailbags and voicemails and things like that that we haven't been able to address. So make sure you send us in your thoughts, hot takes, critical analysis, art theory, film theory stuff. Send that in. You can email us at movies@wisecrack.co. All right, now let's talk Eternals. Let's get into this shtick. Lux, first impressions, brother. I don't know how many times you've seen this film. I know you're familiar with the kind of original source material. First impressions on this film, and then we'll start peeling things.
Yeah, we can get into the source material later. The movie is fine, somewhere between fine and pretty good, but it's by far the Marvel movie that suffers the most for being a Marvel movie. I think is my biggest takeaway from it. I think it could have been a really cool, fun.
What do you mean by that? Like, if it wasn't a Marvel movie, it would have been better?
Yeah,
or
if
because
it didn't have the same kind of obligations to like both the Marvel house style, formula, plot-wise, and also sort of to the rest of the MCU. I think we could have had a really cool, introspective, interesting movie on our hands and a cool take on superheroes. And there were moments of this movie that did do that work. And then there were also moments of this movie where like cool actors are punching dogs made out of spaghetti. And like that's not really my jam so much. So it fluctuated a lot and sort of had some really great stuff, but then also because it was doing Marvel movie things, kind of didn't live up to its potential, I don't think.
Yeah, one talking point that we could probably address is a lot of people were saying this would have been great as a series or like a mini series or something like that. So that's something we can think about as well. And maybe why with Disney Plus and with these other possibilities, why wasn't that the route taken? Were they trying to do the $1 billion like IP with this? Is that what kind of like led them in this direction? Like that's something we can think about. Why was this the choice, you know?
I have a theory about that, which we can get into
Cool.
later if you'd like to when you address that kind of stuff. But I have been thinking a lot about why this was a movie.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Raymond, what about you, brother?
Well, boys, I told you I've been feeling under the weather, and I think it's because I have Eternals fever. Kingo, Druig, Sprite, the gang is all here, even Icarus and old Thena herself. You've seen them on backpacks, you've seen them on lunchboxes, and now for a limited time only, you can see them up on the silver screen where they belong. Gilgamesh, Festus, all your favorites, even Ajax, played by screen legend Selma Hayek in a career-defining role. They take on the
Wow, this is
Deviants
some
in their
sarcasm.
eternal struggle.
Oh my God.
What?
Keep going.
Run, don't walk to the theaters to see this movie big, bold, and loud. But parents, be warned, while this is a 4-quadrant pleaser, there are some big ideas that they grapple with that may be a little bit difficult for Junior to understand, such as when will humanity get its act together and unite to confront and kill God himself? So I'm excited to talk about this with you, gentlemen.
And there's a little bit of sexy time at the beginning of the film.
There's some hot stuff. But
Yeah.
in all sincerity, I mostly agree with Mr. Michael Luxembourg on this one. I think there's some interesting stuff. I love Chloé Zhao's movies, but I think this would be better if it were more of a Chloé Zhao movie than a Marvel movie. And I'm curious to hear what you think on it, Austin.
This is so interesting because I know you're such a huge Chloe Zhao fan, and
I don't know
I
that it's that
wonder-
interesting. But
well, because I wonder, does when somebody has such a unique style and has such a certain history with certain kind of characteristics, when they get brought into these bigger budget films, when they get brought into these huge platform assets, digital assets in the form of a movie, like do they lose that? Like does it go away? And this is a great question for like art theory, film theory, and just kind of understanding. Yeah.
And maybe we could unpack it a little bit. I will say just in short, I think Chloé Zhao is a wonderful filmmaker. I like her aesthetic approach, and I've liked every movie of hers up to and maybe including aspects of this. And for all the trash that I talk about big blockbuster superhero movies, I think that credit where credit is due, Marvel is doing something right. You can't have a winning streak this long if you're not delivering something that is connecting with audiences in a major way. I just think that maybe to Lux's point, Chloé Zhao and Marvel are just a little bit oil and water. I just don't think this is a great blend of elements for filmic success, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, so I went and I saw this in the theater last night. And so for me, one of the very kind of exciting things about being out of lockdown now is, in Australia, we're just emerging. In New South Wales, in Sydney in particular, we're just emerging. So we've been out for about a month. And I went to Sydney Film Fest, so I saw a couple films there in the theater. And then this time was just me and my girl in this tiny little quaint theater in the eastern suburbs called the Ritz. If you're from the Sydney area, you know where it is in Randwick. And it's like this old-timey theater where they've even got like music from like the 40s and 50s playing. And you walk in, and so that was so nice. It's this cute little marquee billboard out front in this tiny little town. And there was nobody there because it was, a Wednesday night at 8:30. And so it was just kind of cool to cruise in there and watch a film in that setting. So for me, that was really enjoyable. And I think that this is the kind of film that works great on the big screen. But I was a little bored at times. I thought that the film felt a little disjointed to me. I thought it both tried to do too much and also too little, and that might seem contradictory, but
See what
certain
you're saying.
aspects it tried to do too much, and certain other aspects it probably needed a little bit more fleshing out. And I thought the performances were fine. I know some people have been a little bit critical of Gemma Chan for being wooden in some. I didn't get that. I kind of thought she was being stoic. I don't think we criticize a lot of times dude superhero type performers when they're being stoic. So I just feel like that's a little bit sort of like what did they expect from this character? I
I
think
thought
it
she
kind
was
of
good in the
fit
film.
well.
All these people are like
Yeah.
30,000 years old. They're
I,
gonna kind of be over it a little bit, I think,
That's,
right?
I feel like it's also just a wild criticism of the movie because it's like the only Marvel movie where you have an assortment of characters who aren't just like 10% different
Constantly
versions of the same
quipping at
type of
each
guy. Wait,
other.
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they're constantly quipping, and it's always just 10% different versions of the same type of guy. And at least this movie was like a million different types of guy, and
Yeah.
everyone was playing them differently, and like they were
They got a little
discernible in this.
guy, they got a big guy, they got a flying
Yeah,
guy.
but with a little bit of personality to them, and
Yeah,
that's like a
yeah.
big swing for Marvel.
And I liked that it wasn't just like a patriotic, nationalistic sort of a piece of propaganda for, America or the West. Obviously, there's still sort of like some interesting themes about like humanity and like the humans on Earth are somehow the humans that are better than all other organisms that have ever existed at a life in the entire universe because somehow the humans on Earth are the only ones that have inspired these figures to somehow forsake their destiny. So I don't know. There's a little bit of self-aggrandizing, like
At,
humans are
at
the
one
best
point,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
Selma Hayek goes, Thanos wiped out half the universe in one snap, and then the people of this
this
planet brought
planet.
everyone back. And I
Yeah,
was like, well, it was more like 5 movie stars. It wasn't like Johnny Lunchpail. Oh, we got to bring everyone back from the snap. It was, like Iron Man and Captain America. They weren't just normal
Also,
people.
yeah. There
notably,
was a little,
people.
there was a little cheesy kind of humanism in there, but yeah, I can deal with that. I can deal with that. Hold on. Let's hold these thoughts. Let's start peeling this madness apart. We kind of covered the first impressions thing. Lux, remember the thing that you were going to say earlier. Raymond, get all your thoughts out. But first, before we do that, I do got to make sure we give a shout to our sponsor of this week's episode, which is Skillshare. Look, y'all know the deal. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can connect with other like-minded people and creatives, and where you can explore projects that you're passionate about. And this is why Skillshare is really so cool, because you can unleash your creativity and you can pursue passions right from the convenience of your own home. They offer thousands of classes on like iPhone photography, drone filming, computer programming and coding and UX and UI design and how to like modify your photos and use cool filters. They also do stuff on like editing, classes for improving your productivity, all kinds of things. Literally, if there's something that you're interested in exploring, you can find a class on Skillshare that'll help you explore that passion. So if you're interested in exploring your creativity and connecting with some cool people, go to Skillshare.com/SMTM and you'll get a free trial of their premium membership. So that's Skillshare.com/SMTM, free trial of the premium membership, or of course you can click the link down below. Go check out Skillshare. All right, Lux, I cut you off before I jumped into that. What were you going to say, dude?
Oh, I was just. It's also notable in terms of like this humanism thing that like Thor's from fucking Asgard, and a bunch of the superheroes got their powers from magical cubes from space. And so, like, the way that they're like humans on Earth are very special, it's like only because like a bunch of really strange coincidences happen. Like, even the humans they're picking out of like the special humans are like Captain Marvel's from outer space. Like, it's a very arbitrary claim that they're making as far as the humanism in this movie. Like the bright line and like the moving goalpost of what constitutes the humans of Earth is very
Well,
weird to
I
me.
think what they're trying to do is there was that thing where it's like they love and they create, and of course they do bad things too, but it's this kind of like cheesy, sentimental, like just affirm the humanness of the human, and when you do that, then that's like the greatest thing sort of thing, which again, yes, affirm the humanness of a human in your daily life, but I'm not sure we should somehow exalt that to like the level of like this romanticism that is like we should save the universe because humans are so cool because of their odd intrinsic imperfections because we love and we create. And I don't know, it just felt like really self-aggrandizing and a little bit
It's
overly sentimental.
it's extremely sentimental and self-aggrandizing, and like I'm saying, it's like it not only that, but like the argument falls apart under like the barest of scrutiny. Like a number of these characters are from outer space who saved the world. Like it wasn't humanity on its own. So like it's the sentimental claim that is like supposed to be like emotionally evocative and to like put us in this place where we like feel with Selma Hayek and we feel with Gemma Chan. But it's like if you're a person who like is feeling but also thinking about the movie, immediately the claim is like, well, this is dog shit. Like this isn't a real argument you're making, Ajax. Come on, you're 30,000 years
Well,
old. You can think better than this.
there's also this really interesting thing where the Festus character
Festus,
is
Festus for the rest of us.
yeah, he sort of he introduces technology, right? And there's this like thing like, are humans ready to advance? So there's this also this theory of like technological evolution or technological development that seems to be quite teleological, but that also makes me think like, okay, so there's a really interesting like, what is the driver of history? What is the driver of evolution and somehow like the advancement of the species? And what it implies is that it implies that the more technology that is introduced, the more they're reaching this apex or this zenith. And then it reaches World War II, and it's like, oh, but it was too much. You know, we shouldn't have given them technology because now humans are actually bad, because if you give them too much power, they'll use it to destroy. And so there's this kind of like interesting tension that they're trying to walk. And then it's like, whose fault is it? Is it humanity's fault that they weren't ready to deal with the technology? Or is it this fucking like alien's fault for giving it to them? And then he actually like fucked everything up. Like whose fault is it? And what really drives history? And I think there's some interesting things to think about there. But
they make one claim about what drives history that I kind of actually liked in one of the moments of the movie that I was particularly excited about, which is when he talks about how like Arishem, the reason they're not allowed to get involved isn't like this pure claim of letting humanity do it on their own and taking off the training wheels. It's that conflict and wars pushes technology forward and pushes societies forward, and that as they evolve through these conflicts, they become more and more the type of species that can feed the baby eternal that's growing inside the earth. And like I found that to be at least like a compelling claim that conflict and violence and sort of the inevitable of culture and technology and desire like is what drives humanity forward and continues evolution, continues progress. And I found that to be underexplored in a lot of ways, but at least like compelling and like specific in a way that I didn't expect a Marvel movie to have.
The problem is though, is that the alien is the one who introduces the technology. So it's not that humans do it on their own. It's that they're getting this sort of like, even though it's not a god, like that's warring against the gods, there's still some sort of like external influence that is guiding, that is leading to the conflicts and the wars that then exponentially produce more innovation. But you still have this technological tinkerer that is standing in the background. So I thought that was kind of a strange, like I didn't know what they were trying to say there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's a lot of the movie that I feel that way about.
I do remember at one point when I was watching it where I think they're in like Babylon or wherever, and they come in and he's building a steam engine, and they go, no, don't give the Babylonians a steam engine. They're not ready for that.
They like rein that in, make it a plow.
A plow. Like, oh, fine. Yeah.
It's called a plow because it plows, or yeah, I mean there is this weird kind of, I don't know that it's judgmental or whatever, is like, I don't know, maybe they weren't ready for steam engines because they hadn't developed steam engines yet. Like knowing that in like, I don't know, maybe you guys have different theories on this, but I personally don't think that like all of our technological advancements have been an alien handing down, you know, fire from the gods, or a monolith pushing people forward like in 2001: A Space Odyssey. But there was a weird thing. I don't really know exactly how to evaluate it, with the notion of just like civilizations would just reach a point of stasis if Brian Tyree Henry didn't step in at some point and give them a fucking plow. Like they have like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It's what they're famous for. I'm sure they figured out like agriculture and plows and shit.
Right, like they solved irrigation. So like, why not plows?
But that's what I wondered. Was the implication that they solved irrigation because he invented that technology for them? And then whatever the kind of let's go regressively, whatever the previous investment or invention was, is that it was all a product of him? Or does he just come in every once in a while with like this is going to be a sort of disruptive technology, right? Like that's what I kind of didn't understand. How much did he influence the technological evolution of human history?
I thought
it was the latter,
but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't.
So just like super
I,
disruptive technology. So the internet was the Eternals. They gave us the internet. You
yes,
retired with
Al Gore descended from.
it.
No, I don't know. I mean, did he make the Zune or whatever? Like, it seems like he's really hung up his technology cleats there, and I think some of that has to, he blames himself for nuclear annihilation and stuff like that, which is an interesting idea, but one of those things that's like, I don't really know if you want to evoke this kind of thing in like a kids movie, and unless you can really commit the time, once again, like Lux was saying, unless you can really commit the time to like picking apart the nuances of these things and stuff. I saw someone in the chat saying that like it's unfair to say like obviously we know that that character wasn't responsible for creating the bomb. He wasn't like one of the guys in the Manhattan Project or whatever. But it is still, I think that people are glomming onto that moment in the movie because it is like, I don't know, maybe a little bit tone deaf for a movie that's largely about like Angelina Jolie dance fighting against aliens and stuff. Um, but to come back to like the overall pacing of the film, was it you, Lux, or Austin that said it kind of feels simultaneously too short and too long?
That was an
I think
Austin gem.
yeah, I think a product of that too is that like when you're trying to introduce this many new characters, I think when Marvel really sings, it's because they take advantage of the investment that the audience has made in the past 10 years of their movies. Like Endgame may be 3 hours long, but it kind of goes by like that just because it jumps from scene to scene. It's, there may be 100 characters in it, but they've put in the work, whether you want to call that cinema or traditional filmmaking, whatever label you want to slap on it, like Marvel has put in the legwork to earn a 3 hour runtime with 30 characters on the marquee. I think with this movie, you're kind of thrown into the deep end. You have to get to know all of these characters, get to know their power sets, get to know their psychology, get to know their ideas, their desires, etc. And then, uh, they all have to do a thing by the end of it, and you're still kind of like, oh, I'm just now getting my sea legs with this. So I do think that maybe this would have been better suited for a mini series, or maybe they could have soft pedaled some of these characters into other movies to introduce them before throwing them all out at once. But I think when you hire Chloé Zhao, who's a great filmmaker, you let her make a film, not necessarily a mini series. But
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I mean, I think you mentioned Chloe Zhao, and I think this is that element, this like sort of having a million characters we don't know. I think is one of the places where her direction and also the performance of the actors like actually was really impressive to me in this movie. Where like I expected to be like, I don't understand any of these people. Like I expected to just be confused for the whole movie because I was like, I'm meeting an entire Thanksgiving worth of family, like for 2.5 hours. It's gonna be a lot. And I thought they'd had some like really impressively quickly done scenes that like really were like kind of in like almost like improv style. Someone shows up and is like, "My name is Mr. Guns and I love guns. That's my deal." Like it was like really effective sort of character clarification and distinction and differentiation. I thought was pretty impressive. But like even and I think it was like an admirable job, but it was like an uphill battle, like that was just like the size of the task was so daunting that like, even though I think they did a really good job on a performance and direction level of distinguishing and defining the characters, like it was never going to be good enough because like 2.5 hours is what, like we're talking 210 minutes. That's less than 21 minutes per character to be the central figure of a scene, assuming that there's no scenes with anyone else. Right. And like, that's just not
Yeah,
enough
I
time.
kind of I would have liked to have seen, how sometimes you'll get a series where it'll be not episodic, it'll still be it'll have its through line, but each episode will focus a little bit more on one of the characters. I'd love to get a little bit more, like what the fuck was Druig? Was he creating a cult in that village where he was? Is like some sort of
Kind
commune.
of, yeah.
Yeah, it was like
Another
a
interesting
commune.
idea that they don't really get to develop too
Yeah.
much.
I would have loved to have known more like, okay, so he gets disaffected after when they're in in South America or Central America in what was it, 1571
Yeah.
or whatever it was, and then they've got a few hundred years. Like, what does he do? Does he go into the jungle and create this sort of like peaceful communal society? And how much is he controlling them? And do they worship him, or is he just one of them? Like, I would have loved to know a little bit more about these individual characters and what they were doing in the meantime. Flesh out some of their own internal tensions. Give us a little bit more screen time for some of them too. I mean, obviously it was focused on Circe and Icarus kind of as being like the primary ones, and you get the little bit with Sprite where she's there but then kind of disappears for a bit and then comes back in again at the end, kind of fucking things up. And I don't know, it just felt very inconsistent because they were trying to do so much, and then because of that they ended up doing so little with like character development, the things that create the drama that get us invested in what is otherwise a sort of more slow, meditative story. If it's just bang, 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 shoot 'em up, good guys versus bad guys, which Avengers do very well, or I'm sorry, which MCU does very well, while adding certain subtleties of character development, that's one thing. But this was much more of trying to be a sort of like character exploration, but then it was trying to kind of like have the bang, bang, shoot 'em up as well. And I don't know, I think it didn't quite find the balance.
Yeah, you're getting it like sort of exactly like actually sort of have enabled me to think about my it suffers from being a Marvel movie claim in like the exact way I want to put it, which is that like one of my problems with Marvel movies, they create emotional stakes by being like, if they don't do the thing, everyone dies, and we hate it when everyone dies. That's the worst. But this movie wasn't really doing that work. It was trying to do the emotional work of the reason we want things to happen is because we care about these characters, we care about their conflicts, their feelings. But then it spends the back third of the movie being like, if we don't do the thing, everyone dies, because that's what Marvel movies always do.
Right.
And because of that, it doesn't give enough time to really pay off or interact with like some work that ranges from decent to good throughout the entire first 2/3 of the movie. And it's like, it's frustrating because like I would like to see the natural third act of that movie or whatever that isn't like a big hand is coming, but is like
right.
The cabin in the woods.
I would like to
thinking
see a
the
little
cabin in
more
the
of it.
woods ending. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do really hope that they have a scene in this at the end where they're like, people are still confused at where this huge fucking statue in the middle of the ocean came from. I hope every movie after this also has a TV in the background where they're just like, years have gone by and still no answers on this enormous statue in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Hopefully it's the cue for like Namor to show up and be like, hey, this big hand fucked up Atlantis. Who did this? And then go.
Yeah, someone dropped a statue on my city.
Someone dropped a statue under my city coming upward somehow. This makes very little sense to me, the king at the bottom of the ocean.
I do want to give a quick shout. We got a couple of comments here. Jason says that I think the Eternals is just the MCU personifying and making characters out of evolution. So that's the process of evolution personified, characterized. What do we think about that? Is there something in there? You know, you have the kind of an efficient cause in the form of Festus, who is like this driver of technological innovation. What would the other, like, would they be characteristics of a sort of like historical biological evolutionary process? Is that something we can see there? What do we think?
That kind of, I guess, is a kind of a natural way to segue into me complaining about the original Eternals comic book.
Okay.
Because that's very much kind of the juice of the original Eternals comic is sort of, so Jack Kirby left. So top line thing, the Eternals original comic is my least favorite thing, my favorite comic book artist ever made. So that's just to start from there. But so Jack Kirby left Marvel, went to DC, did the New Gods, which, so good. We love it. We love the New Gods.
Isn't Ava DuVernay doing that?
She was, but I think they have shelved it, which makes me very upset. It's probably the first time I got angry at movie news in a long time because I'd kind of become jaded about it. But then I heard that and I got like actually pissed. But then he came back to Marvel and he was like, I'm not done with cosmic weird shit yet. And for some reason, I'm into the vaguely racist new agey text, The Chariot of the Gods. And so drawing on the Chariot of the Gods basically said that aliens would come to Earth and like taught humans how to do all the crazy stuff, build the pyramids, invent a plow, etc. He sort of expands that idea out to these Eternals who've been here the whole time and have intervened in humanity in various ways, the fastest ways and others. And the Deviants are a lot more humanized in that story and are a lot more intervening in humanity's affairs in a lot more tricky ways than just like trying to eat guys. Um, and I think in that setting, there is a real argument that it's a large story about evolution and the role of like external influences and guiding and all that stuff. I think the movie, largely because of what it does to the Deviants, doesn't quite get there in the same way for me. Doesn't
Mm.
quite like talk about evolution in quite the same way because it does feel really like the only person who like they're really strict about not messing with humanity or interfering in humanity in a way that the books aren't quite as strict about. Um, and so I think evolution is like a big theme of the movie, but I feel like what does Icarus represent in that setting? What does Druig represent in that setting? I guess communitarianism, so Druig, scratch Druig. But like what does Icarus do? What does Cersei do for that? What does Sprite do for that? Is a little bit iffy. I do think Jason's like tagging like sort of a key concept that you kind of have to be
Well, is
thinking about.
Cersei supposed to be like elemental differentiation? You know, because she can turn like rocks into water. So you have certain like let's say inorganic life as an element, and then you have Sprite, who's like narrative, story, imagination. I mean, I'm just kind of
Yeah.
like I'm just trying to figure out. You know,
A very cool thread that another thread that you don't really get to see them pull, but they mention that she is kind of like creating mythology throughout the
yeah.
ages. That and obviously the characters are named after famous characters from the Epic of Gilgamesh is the oldest book ever written. Like I really love the notion of these folks being like the people that other folks tell stories about, but
Yeah.
you only kind of get that in flashbacks here and there. And
That's so much cooler in the movie than in the
I don't
books,
know.
because in the books, like Thena and Athena both exist.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
And so
That's kind of
Thena
neat.
just like shows up sometimes and she's like, no, I'll be like the on the ground version. You like
Um,
hang out in Olympus or whatever.
speaking,
Or I think maybe space.
uh, I was just going to say, speaking of credits, Emmy was asking in the chat about why Chloe Zhao has 2 screenwriting credits on this. I just wanted to chime in on that. WGA arbitration's really weird, but basically, Chloe Zhao has a credit for screenplay on this. She also has a co-writing credit. Anytime you see screenwriters connected by an ampersand instead of the word and, that means they worked on the script as a team. So the reason that she's credited twice on the screenplay is that she did a draft as a team with I can't remember her co-writer's name, and then she did Patrick Burley was her co-writer for a draft. Ryan Firpo and Kaz Firpo, who get the story credit. That often means that they probably did the first draft. Ryan Firpo and Kaz Firpo also get a screenplay credit. Then Chloe Zhao and Patrick Burley are credited as a screenwriting team, and then Chloe Zhao probably did the final draft herself. So WGA arbitration is really, really weird, Emmy, but that's a good question you brought up in the chat. I just wanted to take a second to clarify that.
That's cool.
How much do you think she was able to tweak? I mean, because so much is talked about the kind of cohesiveness of the MCU, which has allowed it to be so successful over what is it, 15, 20 years now? And that it's being driven by a sort of like top-down machine. So how much freedom do you think somebody like Chloe Zhao has in writing the story and artistic vision, things like that?
I mean, I can only speculate. I know there was a lot of to-do made about her kind of having a bit more leash than most of the filmmakers in the MCU have had. I think she said in several interviews that she didn't not that she didn't use a second unit, but that she was able to shoot the action scenes, which Marvel notoriously doesn't generally let their directors shoot the action scenes because so much of that stuff is prevised. It's carried off by other filmmakers. They want their directors to focus more on the acting beats, storytelling, what have you. It's more a division of labor thing. That's not exclusive to Marvel. That happens in a lot of blockbuster films. I would imagine that I know she was developing this project before she won the Oscar. This may actually have something to do with the screenwriting arbitration, is that maybe before she had a little bit less control. She was part of a writing team that was being a bit more hands-on from Marvel. And then maybe after the Oscar, Marvel wanted to say this is a Chloe Zhao picture and maybe gave her the reins fully after that. Who knows? So much of this stuff happens behind the scenes. And even in instances of movies really falling apart where like directors get changed midstream and stuff like that, they typically play that stuff pretty close to the chest, and all these contracts have, you know, NDAs out the wazoo. But yeah, from what I've heard, I think she had a good amount of creative control, which I think for Marvel is a little bit of a win-win, because if the movie does well, they can say, okay, see, we get a little bit of credit for, you know, letting an auteur do her thing. And if the movie doesn't do so well, which it looks like maybe it's not doing as hot, at least not keeping track or keeping pace with Shang-Chi, they can probably use that and point to that in the future and say, okay, well, look, we gave one director the reins on one of these movies. It didn't do so hot, so that's why we're so controlling over the next 20 or whatever.
If I can recklessly speculate, I do think that there are a couple MCU movies where it feels like they've sort of been like, these are the key structural tentpoles of MCU movies, and in between kind of do whatever you want. I'm thinking like Thor Ragnarok is kind of like that, where it has kind of a different feel and different vibe between its different like key classically MCU beats. Winter Soldier is kind of like that. I thought Eternals kind of falls into that camp as well. And it kind of feels like when they have people they trust, or people they want to sort of, like, to borrow a wrestling term, like put over as a director or put over as the company, they're willing to sort of give them free space between these like key kind of critical story beats or like timing beats, like the big fight at the end, like the sort of action-y intro stuff, the sort of midpoint kind of mega crisis, like, which are classic screenwriting beats, but Marvel really leans into those in very specific ways. And it kind of felt like this was one of those movies where they were like, all right, you have to hit these 3 things or these 4 things, whatever. The rest of it, do your thing. And that's kind of how the movie felt to me in a lot of ways, and similar to Ragnarok and Winter Soldier, although sadly, didn't work for me as well as Ragnarok or the Winter Soldier, which is too bad because I was really excited about this movie, or at least really excited about Chloe Zhao.
Yeah, I want to jump back into the chat real quick and talk about like a theme. Raymond said, "I love me a prime mover," and I did wonder this at one point.
Not me, Raymond. It was a listener, Raymond.
Yeah, listener Raymond. Yes, in the chat, and I did wonder this. It seems that I kind of was trying to understand the metaphysics, for lack of a better term, of this film. And you kind of get like this theory that these deviants were created and that they had certain capacities, and that those capacities were outside the scope of the design, right? And it's a really, it's kind of like an easy little, like, I created it, but there was a design flaw, you know, kind of thing. It's like, oh no, you know, like I dang it, like there was a tripwire and it caused a fuse break, and now they are hunters and they're apex predators rather than kind of just doing their simple job. And so I did wonder, is this film giving us a sort of a God theory of a kind of winding the clock and then letting it go? And then every once in a while you get sort of like these angelic beings that kind of intervene only when necessary at the prescripted times, whether it's with technology or fighting the deviants, but that they don't interfere too much in human-to-human relationships outside of those stipulations. Like, what is the theology? What is the cosmology? What is the metaphysic that this film is actually offering to us?
I mean, I think that is basically it, right? Like, that is one of the classically Marvel Celestials thing, is like, they're around, they're super powerful, they show up sometimes and everyone's afraid of them.
Yeah.
And like, that sounds like God to me. And like and their whole thing is they sort of like set it and forget it when it comes to planets. And the only sort of major intervention beyond the Deviants was like, oh, we have to also have these Eternals because the Deviants have gone wrong. And again, to go to the comics, the line between Eternals and Deviants in the comics is like is way more blurry. It has a lot to do with like it has a lot to do with stable genetics. You can see why I kind of find the Eternals comics to be like a little bit on the weirdly racial side in a way that I'm not super comfortable with.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It has a lot more to like stable genetics, and like the Deviants can die and change, but the Eternals can't or whatever. But in this story, that's not really it. It's that, like you said, they made these Deviants as kind of like machines to protect humans, but the machines didn't work, so they sent these other guys to go do it and to take care of the Deviants as well.
Yeah, I like that they made a predator to prey on predators, and they had to make new predators to prey on those. It just you get this notion going into this that like Arishem or the Celestials, whoever's pulling the strings is just like, what? Stop fucking swallowing new animals to get the last animal you swallowed. Like, don't fucking swallow a bird to catch the fly, dude. Just
there's a human at the
fucking let
bottom of the sea.
animals.
There's a deviant. There's a human
Yeah,
that's not like the deviant of the eternal that's sitting at the bottom of the sea. Yeah.
and it comes back to that. It comes back to that thing of like, I mean, surely if you just let these planets do their thing, they'll figure it out. This goes back to the argument before of like, I don't know, I don't think this ever happened on our Earth, and we eventually figured out a way to like hunt lions to death and stuff. Like we'll figure out a way to get that little fucking baby celestial out of our big Kinder egg. But it is. I don't know. It's one of those weird things that like coming away from it, even not even from like a philosophical perspective, but just within the context of the whole Marvel universe, does this movie kind of like, in a way, sort of absolve Thanos of his whole thing? Like, I mean, I don't care. I want to make that clear.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
I mean, isn't that
by the end of it, you're like, I guess Thanos maybe knew about
Well,
this.
in theory,
Yeah,
again, the comics, Thanos is a fucking Eternal. He's like an Eternal gone wrong. Or is he a deviant? He's like, he's from the planet where all the other ones are from, and he's like the brother. It's.
But isn't this what's being set up with Harry Styles coming in as the brother, and then Kit Harington? Isn't he?
Who was Harry Styles?
He was
Harry Styles
Eros.
comes in as the Eros, and he's like the brother of Thanos. And then
Eros, aka Star Fox.
And isn't Kit Harington Black Knight, who is also a part of the family, right?
I think so. Or is he part of a different family? Black Knight I'm less familiar with because I didn't because I don't think that's a Jack Kirby product. I'm a real Kirby head.
There's that bit at the end where he's talking to Circe and he's like, just to let you know, I've got this really complex family history, so I got to tell you the truth too. And then when Harry Styles comes in and he says something about how like he's the something of the Black Knight, and I missed it, and I was like, oh shit, because I'm not like super versed on the comics, I was like, oh okay, so is Harry Styles somehow related to or connected to Kit Harington's character, and that somehow they're setting us up for this like Thanos, Eros, and then like Kit Harington's Black Knight thing that's going to be the next kind of like Eternals 2 or whatever. Maybe its own standalone project.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I'm excited to join you guys again to discuss it.
All I know with the Black Knight is that he's like a rude guy with a cool sword, which to be fair, pretty good archetype. But like,
Good archetype.
But like, I don't know much beyond that.
Not enough rude dudes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm excited to see old Jon Snow himself swing a sword around while quipping with the best of them.
Him and Blade saying rude things about vampires, chopping them up.
What's Harry Styles is the One Direction guy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
He's the handsome guy who shows up.
I don't know.
Come on, bro. Don't
when he showed up,
know this. Like, let me see your saved photos.
No, I knew.
I bet you got some photos.
I knew he was a One Direction guy, but I didn't know what he looked like. I've never met him or anything. And he hasn't been in. Wasn't he in Dunkirk?
I think so.
Yes.
He hasn't been in anything else, right? Like he's just been in a couple of big movies.
Yeah, it's a newish thing, his turn to acting. I think Dunkirk was like the first one that was like, hey, guess what? And they did it in a way that I thought was actually really well done too, because it wasn't like he was a centerpiece.
Who was he in? I don't remember.
He was one of the ground soldiers.
Just one of the boys.
Yeah, and it was kind of great that they kind of placed him in that role, and I thought he was phenomenal. Like, if you didn't know it was Harry Styles as being the One Direction guy, as you said. Then
there was never a time when I was watching Dunkirk where I thought to myself, oh, one of these guys is from a fucking boy band or whatever, and they just stuck him in here. And I mean, Dunkirk, good movie. Anyway, wrapping up our conversation about Dunkirk.
Okay, I do have a question. So Makari asks a question or makes a comment at the end of the film, and I couldn't help but notice the allusion, right? But she said that these other people need to learn about kind of the truth of this celestial plan, and then she says the truth will set them free. And so, like, to me, I'm like, ding, 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 Bible, religion, okay, Christianity. And obviously there's so much in just in Western mythology, whether it's in comic books or film or whatever else, that is derived from the sort of Judeo-Christian legacy that has shaped so much of Western society. So what I wonder is this a sort of, because Wisecrack made, I think, a really kind of like insightful video, like just a little quick take on this being a film with certain theological resonance. So is this in some ways a sort of like retelling of a Christian myth, or a sort of like deconstruction of the Christian myth, and therefore an offering of a different type of theological myth that explains history and its relationship to the cosmos?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm sort of patting myself on the back or like repeating myself because I did a lot of work on that video, but like
Cool.
I think so. I think it's very much the
Yeah.
second. I think it's very much like
Yeah.
this is the phenomenon of life is explainable. The phenomenon of planets are explainable. The phenomenon of entire galaxies are explainable because there's large stone guys with holes in their head who shoot galaxies out of their hands. Um, and so it's explainable. And so like the moral authority, or like the sort of metaphysical existential authority of like a god, big G god, like doesn't compute in the same way when you break it down that way. And it's knowable, and the ineffability of God's like a big, that's a check mark in the God box. Like, and that's no longer, I mean, they're ineffable in a sense, but like they're knowable to a degree, and like they can die or not be born. Like we've seen that. And so it does really kind of like take that out of it, because like where if the Celestials are around, like presumably like there's not a Judeo-Christian God. Like there's not like a big bearded guy gonna show up and be like, oh, you thought the Celestials were powerful. No, 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 no. It looks like Adam Warlock. But like yeah, I think it really is sort of like a refutation of, or like a deconstruction of the Judeo-Christian myth, in the sense that it is sort of saying we can clear out that space and create our own morals, our own choices, our own space, sort of independent of any of that stuff. At least that was obviously my read, because that's what Burns and Amanda and I put in the video. But like, yeah, I do think it's like a very Nietzschean sort of like make your own morals, like to get away from the sort of like God myth stuff. I'm curious what y'all think about that.
What I think about is that the video was excellent.
Well,
I even told Michael on Twitter, kind of half jokingly, I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to say in this episode of the podcast, because I think y'all did a really great job of wrapping up a lot of the really interesting stuff on it.
That's what I was already coming on this podcast, because I was like, I wrote down a lot of those thoughts already and told them to Burns.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're here, because yeah, I'm not feeling so hot, and the chat has been very distracting today. There's a very precocious young man in the chat. I'm not going to mention him by name, because I think that would just send him over the moon.
The fire.
But he is just telling everyone about how all Marvel movies fucking suck or whatever, and it's like, dude, just shut up. Like it's just. No one cares.
Okay,
we're here just to talk about movies and have a good time. Maybe you didn't like this, but you do this. I've seen your name pop up constantly during every time we have any superhero discussion on this channel, and I think that, like, I don't know, maybe just chill out.
I'm not a huge superhero film fan, right? Like it's not the genre that was made for me, right? I get them, and I am always interested to see, because I think storytelling is a wonderful expression of the both conscious and unconscious realities of the society in which the story is told, right? And so for me, I go into these stories and I'm like, cool, what are we telling ourselves? Like, what's this story that we're telling ourselves about ourselves? And so I don't love them, but what I do wonder is this. I wonder if there's so much big, huge, the world needs to be saved stuff that comes out all the time. All the time. Like, there's how many Marvel films have come out? 7 of them. How many DC films have come out? Like 10 of them, right? Like in the past, like, I mean, I'm just making up numbers. More Marvel films, obviously, but in the past, like 12 months,
25,
right? Like, yeah, it's like so it's like in the past year we just have like 10 of these stories that are like, this is the world. And these are the big world questions. And I like thinking of that, obviously. I mean, I'm a philosopher by training. So for me, ask the big questions. But I almost feel a little bit of exhaustion, because we are expressing these stories, but we don't really get a chance to digest them. So it's almost like too much, right? It's like the world has these gods, and we're going to kill the gods. Are we not going to kill the gods? And the next one is like, this Malthusian story on overpopulation and going to kill half the universe. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Our planet's not sustainable. And then it's like this other story about these gods coming to Earth, or these monsters coming to Earth. And it's like, it's just so much all the time. that I wonder if it's like overload. And because everything is so big and so sensationalized anyway on social media and on TV, et cetera, it's just, it feels like I'm almost like my nervous system can't handle it. And I felt that as soon as the film started yesterday, and I'm sitting in that theater, I had a moment where I was like, fuck, okay, like it's just too much all the time, you know? And we maybe our stories don't need to always be so much all the time, which is why I love something like Nomadland, because it's a single little story that is also a universal. It's a singular but universal story, rather than being like, I'm going to tell you a theory of everything every time I make a product. And I don't know. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
I think these movies definitely get caught in like an escalation trap.
Hmm.
Like if you think back to the first Iron Man movie, the big climactic battle scene in that is Robert Downey Jr. and Jeff Bridges punching each other on a freeway. Like granted they have big fucking robot suits or whatever, but like I think eventually, you know, as they just kind of escalate and escalate, with a few exceptions. I think that the Ant-Man movies are kind of fun because it's like, oh, we're doing a little heist, and then they have that really fun conceit in the final battle between Ant-Man and Bad Ant-Man or whatever his name is, where they're like fighting on a toy train, and every time they cut to a wide of like the train just kind of falling off the track, it totally deflates the stakes in just like a really funny and sort of self-aware way. I kind of, there's a part of me that after they did Endgame, I was like, okay, well, this is sort of my off ramp. You know, they pulled it off. It's a pretty impressive thing. You know, some of the movies may be hit or miss, but once again, you can't argue they connected with audiences in a major way and they kept the ball in the air for like 12 years. That's pretty impressive, however you feel about the pictures. But then I got hired to talk about movies on a podcast, so now I have to keep watching them. And I do just wish, I think that this movie and Shang-Chi a little bit do deviate from the formula. They try some new things. They look a little bit different. This one especially has a different look and a
Real
different vibe
colors
to it at a lot of points. Real colors, real flavors. But I do wish that like they could take this opportunity where instead of like having to constantly continue to escalate, they could do a few of those little victory laps again. Like Guardians of the Galaxy was a big movie, but it still feels small and character oriented in a way that this one, the characters kind of get lost in the sauce when the characters really should be the strength of this movie. And I wish that they would just let them kind of have it out and let them have a big have a big set piece, emotional set piece, be about whether or not they're going to go against their programming and if they're going to defy their lord or whatever. And I think every time they touch on that, it just ends up feeling like lip service. Whereas I think the big questions in this is kind of where it should be living. And I don't know. I don't know. It just feels like a lot of the time they're like, okay, well, enough of that. We got to bring another, what was Lux, your thing? Another snake dog out of the river to attack Jon Snow.
Or whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, and now with the new Spider-Man, you're going to be getting the multiverse. So it's like, so not only...
Can we get that with the Into the Spider-Verse? Is it kind of like similar?
Yeah, you got Doctor Strange that's doing his like dimensional bending and stuff like that. So which is an interesting thing. I wonder if we're so just caught up in so much of the current discourses that like kind of the techno-scientific discourse is shaping, that it kind of prevents us from actually having what I think are even more interesting stories. Like okay, so Guardians of the Galaxy works really well for me because it's kind of like a space adventure, and it's like this team of space people going on and solving a case. It's almost like a James Bond kind of like you got a mission and you got to solve the mission, and of course there are huge stakes, but it's like really about this crew and them like dealing with the problem, and so you really get invested in the crew and the kind of for lack of a better term, the humanity of it.
Yeah.
Because even when you're writing about non-humans, you're still anthropomorphizing them because it's humans telling the story, right? So there's something about that. Whereas I feel like if you try to get too metaphysical, try to get too cosmological, at some point you're going to run into a boundary problem. And so then it's like, okay, so then you got to go back inward or something. But then it just kind of like detaches me from it. Like I get a little lost in it.
And for what it's worth, I also think Guardians of the Galaxy, in addition to something like Iron Man 3, which is very clearly a Shane Black movie, but Guardians really do seem like the work of James Gunn. Like he really seems to have a sense of authorship with those films down to every frame, the way that he's staging some of those in-camera jokes and things like that. So I think a lot could be said for giving a little bit more creative control of the directors with these things and letting them do something a bit more distinct going forward. Because, you know, not every one of these movies, like we've seen with the last 3 that have come out, Shang-Chi did really well, as I mentioned before, but not every one of these movies is going to be a billion-dollar success. Maybe you don't have to dig yourself into a $250 million hole every time you make one of them. Like, people are going to go out, a reliable enough segment of the audience is going to go out and see a Marvel movie because it's a Marvel movie. Like, if you want to tell some weirder, smaller, more esoteric stories, you got the franchise series on Disney Plus now, but I could also, you know, see a world in which they scale back their vision for some of these in-between movies and then go really big for the team-up movies. Cool. With this one, it was a big team-up movie that didn't have any of the in-between to lay the groundwork, so it kind of gets caught in between there.
My friend Forrest, who is a real Marvel movie watching man, a real freak for the shit, a real slop pig for the Marvel sludge. He said, I think very wisely, that all the best Marvel movies are the Marvel movies that are least interested in being Marvel movies and are more interested in just being the movie that they are. I think that Winter Soldier, Ragnarok, both Guardians of the Galaxy, Shang-Chi are all very much like, they're playing Marvel movie rules, they're in the MCU, but they are way more interested in executing the specific type of movie. And sometimes it's even like a genre distinction where, like, fucking, like you were saying, there's like a sort of space operatic Guardians of the Galaxy, or the spy movie that is Civil War, or the sort of like
Black Panther has a little James
Black
Bond
Panther's a little James Bond going on. Ragnarok has like this like very present like satire comedy element happening. And I think it's those movies that are like another genre with superheroes rather than a superhero movie that tend to work the best. And I would think part of the reason also about this anxiety you're talking about is kind of related to that like, you said a phrase that like I say all the time to Burns for some reason, which is that like media is how we talk to ourselves about ourselves. I think I even snuck it into one of our videos. Because but like, yeah, I think I got that into one of our videos. I think it was actually the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard video, which hilariously I was able to trick them to letting me talk about why bad movies are actually good, implicitly implying that their movie was bad, even though they paid us to talk about it. Huge win for Lux. But the thing is that the world we live in now is endless sort of like high school debate style, like, if we don't fix this problem, everyone dies. No way. Yes. There's no way out of it. It's all the time. It's they teach critical race theories in school. The union will collapse and America will fall into a civil war and nukes will fly, or COVID will kill everyone, or global warming will kill everyone. Some of these things are more true than others, but that's like the world we live in is in that space, like is in that swirl of huge stakes. And so if the movies are reflecting that anxiety back, it makes sense, even if it isn't maybe psychically curative in the way that I would like movies to be.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly.
It is reflecting that unhealthy world, and it sucks. And it sucks, especially with superhero movies, because like I fucking love comic books, and I hate how much
this is my fear, is then it's pathological. So this, like you just said, it's not psychically, I don't know how you said it, but it's not psychically adjusted or psychically healthy or whatever.
It's psychically curative, but
Yes, curative, exactly.
And also, if you're someone who
pathologically like mimetically re-exploring your own anxiety, then it becomes a type of obsessive compulsive fascination or fetish with your own anxiety, rather than trying to kind of explore them in a way towards adjustment, not necessarily towards reconciliation or ignorance of the thing, but there's got to be a talking cure in the form of media.
Dogs are funny.
Are they funny?
And to that end, I was going to say that if you are the kind of person who like gets really upset about like the kind of movies that Disney is making right now. Like, I got bad news for you. If Disney wasn't making Marvel movies, they wouldn't be making anything better. Yeah. Like, this fucking company used to make a movie a week. Like, back when they owned a chain of theaters, they used to release 50 movies a year, and they were all dog shit. They were like fucking The Boatniks and The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes and The Swiss Family Robinson. Like, if it weren't like genre defining and box office smashing superhero movies, they'd be making some other garbage. So like, if you think that, oh, if Disney would just put down the Marvel busy box for once, they'd unleash a treasure trove of wonderful contemporary cinema, you're just wrong.
Yeah.
Like, they're just going to keep pumping out Marvel movies and Star Wars movies, and if they didn't have those, they'd go acquire Thundercats and make 17 of that.
God, give me
like,
17 Panthro movies.
just chill, y'all.
Well, on the just chill, y'all note, we do have to wrap up this conversation. So I just want to say real quick, 20 seconds, final thoughts. Lux, go.
It's too bad they started Eternals pre-production before they got the rights to the X-Men, because they really wanted to make an X-Men movie, and this is what we got instead, and that sucks because the X-Men are vastly superior to the Eternals.
Raymond?
Check out the video that Lux and Mr. Michael Burns worked on together. It's a great video. It's only like 10 minutes long. It's kind of a little quick hit. And I think that they cover all this stuff far better, far more eloquently than I could possibly care to in my current physical state.
And with regards to the eloquence, big shout out to Amanda Shirker, who actually wrote the very, very good words.
Yes,
very good words. Burns and I just like threw a bunch of ideas at her, and she turned it into a really excellent script.
Cool.
Yeah, Amanda crushed it as usual. So shout out to Amanda as well, and apologies that I can't fucking care about these goddamn movies anymore.
I am sitting,
but I'm really excited to talk about Spider-Man.
I'm kind of, I don't know. I feel like I'm broken. Like before, I was kind of like I had Marvel fatigue, and now maybe I'm a little bit of like I'm curious. Like it's like a after the fatigue, I'm like, well, maybe I'll take a little Marvel nourishment. I don't really know. So I'm kind of like in this in-between space, and I don't really know what to think. So maybe you out there can tell me what to think. We're not going to dig into the mailbag this week, because next week, all mailbag, all day, all the time. We're going to be answering all your questions from the past, however long it is. We're going to dig through there, and we're going to spend an hour just freaking answering stuff. So make sure you email us, movies@wisecrack.co. That's movies@wisecrack.co. Or, of course, you can call us at 1-213-534-8807. That's 1-213-534-8807. Also, just a reminder, go follow us on Twitter, SMTM_POD. Hit us up on Patreon so you can get access to the bonus content. Check out our other podcasts, Culture Binge, Squanch. Obviously, we're not releasing new episodes of Squanch because Rick and Morty is paused, but go back and check out the back catalog. And yeah, that's all the goodness. Where can people find you on the internet, Lux?
Blammo. I'm on Twitter @Tailboy. That's TAIL_BOI. And also I stream old or now new Japanese RPGs on Twitch at twitch.tv/pixelgoblins with my aforementioned friend Forrest. And the various wrestling shows I work on will be back eventually, but they're not yet, so I don't have anything in that respect.
Okay, awesome. And are things kind of back to normal where you are? Like, other than...
I mean, I'm in Texas. Everyone's been acting like it's been normal forever,
yeah.
Even though I'm constantly terrified.
Yeah, my mom's outside Waco, so yeah, she reports on that to me all the time. So, yeah. All right, Raymond, what about you, brother? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can come scream at me on Twitter and Letterboxd. I'm @Crematoria. That's it.
Sick. You can find me on Twitter, Austin_Hayden, Insta, AUS_HAY, all that good stuff. All right, we're going to get out of here. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining. Follow, Patreon, all that good shit. Tell us what you thought about Eternals. Mailbag podcast episode next week. Raymond, give us your low energy send out.
Yeah, and as always, folks, when asked if she would be interested in directing a superhero movie, Jane Campion said, "I hate them. I actually hate them."
Yo, everyone, make sure you stick around at the end of this episode to check out the Patreon episode preview. In this chat with guest Thomas Flight, we get into feature film debuts. We talk about what are some of our favorite feature film debuts, what makes a great feature film debut, etc., etc. So make sure you check that goodness out at the end of the episode. All right, later. I was thinking Lynn Ramsey, Ratcatcher.
God, I love that movie.
What a debut, right?
And what a career she's had beyond that as well. Morven Collar, You Were Never Really Here, most recently.
Yeah.
Phenomenal film. Yeah, she's one of the best filmmakers working today.
Yeah, and then I think it seems like a film in the horror genre that has kind of changed the landscape of how horror is done is the recent Get Out, which...
I was going to bring up some recent ones. Yeah.
Which I forget. I forget that that's a debut feature because for some reason it was handled with such confidence and it landed so heavy in the kind of like public consciousness that it just almost doesn't make sense that it was a debut feature because people don't think of it in that way, but it was, which is all the more impressive.
Get Out, I think it's a great script. I think Us is a much better directed movie, but when you were going into Us, you were going into it having seen Get Out. So you know he's going to have some tricks up his sleeve.
Yes.
You know things are probably not going to be as they seem. The great thing about Get Out is that if you avoided trailers, I mean, I did. I was able to go into that theater, just let him work his fucking magic. And when the screw starts to turn in that movie, I mean, depends. I mean, pretty early on, there's some stuff in there where she's talking about, oh yeah, my dad would have voted for Obama 3 times and blah, blah, blah. And you're already kind of going like, oh boy, they might be trying a little too hard. And then when things really take off, I was so shocked because I went and saw the movie, loved it, watched the trailer for it when I got home. And they fucking give away everything. I don't want to be old man on porch yelling about, movie trailers these days, but he's definitely at the vanguard for contemporary horror, but right up there with him. I think Hereditary had a huge impact. I Can't Stop Singing the Praises of Raw, another one of my favorite movies. Speaking of
The Witch, was another great debut horror, recent horror.
Yeah.
And
Is It Follows a directorial
It is not.
debut?
That was David Robert Mitchell's second feature.
Okay.
He had done a movie called The Myth of the American Sleepover. That's just like kind of a quiet little hangout movie. And then It Follows is like taking that hangout formula and dropping a demon into it.
Okay.
But I really like David Robert Mitchell. I'm bummed that Under the Silver Lake didn't do so hot because I feel like it maybe slowed his career down a little bit. I hope he bounces back because his movies are always interesting. They're always something new and fresh and exciting.
So what is it that that makes us praise that this is a debut feature? Is it just that we're like surprised that, oh my god, this filmmaker came out of nowhere? Or is it that we're kind of like, hey, let's turn our attention to an artist that is commanding our focus for hopefully the next 20, 30, 40 years? I'm kind of wondering, like, why do we care so much about this being a debut? Is it because it's an announcement? Or is it because we're kind of like, wow, how the fuck did they do that? Or is it both?
I think there's definitely a little bit of both. I think for me, there's an excitement in like, finding somebody like Damien Chazelle with Whiplash and then being like, I'm in. And
if you want to hear more of this chat and other bonus episodes, head on over to wisecrack.com/Patreon. You can sign up for as little as $2 to support the channel, and you'll get access to all these goodies and a bunch of other good ad-free content. So patreon.com/Wisecrack. We love y'all. Peace.